7 years ago, my life was actively falling apart. I was escaping a really toxic relationship, and I moved into low-income housing with my 1-year-old daughter. I needed a fresh start. Like, I really, really needed one. Maybe I would go back to school, get a better job, become a better version of myself. But things kept falling apart. My 13-year-old Hyundai Entourage was beginning to sound like it was constantly coughing and clearing its throat at the same time. Something like, for all you mechanics in the audience. And my job, which I loved, and I could bring my daughter with me to, it was also ending. This was not a recipe for success. I needed a game plan. How was I going to get a car without a job? How was I going to get a job without childcare? And how could I possibly find childcare without those first two things? So I took some advice from some people I knew, and I went to city welfare, and I asked for help. And they did send my car to a mechanic, but it came back with the diagnosis that it was going to cost more to fix than it was worth. Welfare was not going to pay for that. The puzzle pieces just weren't coming together. How was I going to make it all work? Poverty. It's a word so threatening that our country declared a war against it 6 decades ago. And we're still fighting, but over time, the idea that poverty is the enemy has shifted, and now it's the people experiencing poverty. They're the enemy as well. Take, for example, the growing frustration over the people living in their cars on our city streets. It's not uncommon to hear people say something like, "Something's got to be done. It's unsightly, takes away from our already limited parking. And these people are probably dangerous. Why else would they be living in their cars, right?" Maybe some of you are agreeing. But then it came out that one of our city's firefighters was among the unhoused. And the same people who felt indignant were suddenly confused. How are they supposed to feel now? Is the firefighter some dysfunctional lowlife or a person who needs help? And if we see the humanity of the firefighter, can we not extend that same humanity to the other people living in their cars? And a harder question, which we still haven't answered yet, where else are they supposed to go? Doesn't everybody need a place to lay their heads? So, what do the firefighter and I have in common? We both belong to a growing number of people who have struggled to meet our basic needs. We have value to add to our communities, but we needed help. And the system that's supposed to provide that help is broken. There are so many similar stories, unique and yet personal for each of the people experiencing them. My story is still developing too. Today I have my degree, and thank you. And I also have a job working for that same housing authority that I moved into at my lowest point. Thank you again. It feels really good to be able to help people in a way that I believe is meaningful. And that means connecting with the person and not their problems, building a relationship. When I'm working with a resident for the first time, it's not uncommon for them to feel really tense. It's usually because I've gotten a referral from management, maybe something like back rent. And they don't want to talk to a stranger about their problems, let alone a stranger who represents the system. It would be like if one of you opened up the door and there was an IRS agent standing there. I find that I can diffuse some of that by explaining that I have a history as a housing resident myself. That tension visibly leaves their body as they realize that they don't have to defend themselves or their situations to me. I get it. And as they open up to me about what's going on, what are the real barriers they're facing, that's when we can begin to find solutions. But we're not going to get there if we're viewing each other as opponents. My job allows me to play the part of a diplomat. I get to try to bridge a communication gap between the people in housing and the services I'm trying to connect them to. By building a deeper understanding, we can begin to work together. I have a seat at the table, which is the point of what I'm trying to say today. I believe we need to create more seats at the table. So, from that seat and to my captive audience, I'd like to share some stories of a failed system. They are not anomalies. They happen to people just like me. In fact, people like all of us. People who want the best for themselves and their families and are doing their best with what they've got. The system. So, people don't know about the programs that exist that could help them. This is a major brand failure. Imagine Apple coming out with a new iPhone, but not having a PR campaign or advertisements. It wouldn't happen. But it happens all the time in social services. And people miss out on help that could have prevented personal crises. Like a family I know whose breadwinner lost their job during the pandemic. And they tried for months to find something to replace that lost income. But having a highly specific skill set meant that finding a job was hard. And they took on mountains of credit card debt, just trying to keep their lights on and the rent paid. But they didn't know that the pandemic that caused their hardship also was the catalyst to create programs that could have helped them with both of those things. And the programs that people do know about, they're confusing. They're written in legal speak. And you can ask questions, but you might get a different answer depending on the day or who you're talking to. And you can misfile an application and be labeled a fraud, banned from future access to that program. Like an elderly resident who tried to sign up for assistance that could have provided either phone or internet. She tried to get both, and then was told she couldn't have either. Imagine how she felt. She's just trying to get access to something that we all take for granted and need. And she was treated like a criminal because she was confused. And in fact, even I hadn't understood that part of the application process. The policies and programs that exist are hard to navigate. And the fewer resources you have, the more true that is. Imagine you're trying to get a job, and the only childcare that you can access is a federally funded Head Start program that operates for a half day. And then, what if you had to take a bus to and from each morning and afternoon, a 1.5-hour trip each way? It would have been a 5-minute drive by car. That 6-hour-a-day commute is a reality a resident shared with me. And now, that same Head Start program that people depended on has closed its doors, citing the changing demographics in Portsmouth. The changing demographics. With our homeless shelters at max capacity, hundreds of people on the waiting list for public housing, and an ever-increasing cost of living, the only change that I see is a greater need. The people who would have used that program were there. They just couldn't access the program. And a huge failure, huge problem, is that there is no easy way out of the social welfare system. the social and policy infrastructure hasn't been thought of. And everyone I know, including myself, has a story to share about how hard it is to break free from receiving services. We call it the invisible ledge, because all of a sudden you can make just barely too much to qualify for assistance, but not nearly enough to make ends meet on your own. I have had people tell me that they can't afford to take a raise or even work a few hours while they're receiving disability, because when it comes down to the application, $1 extra can cause them to lose their food assistance, health care, or even housing voucher. How are people supposed to break free from poverty if they're penalized for trying to get ahead? As far as I've come in this past 7 years, even I have areas of my life that would be affected by a change in income. So I have to walk that line. So, what is the answer? There isn't a simple answer, and there isn't just one. But I believe that the clear place to start would be to bring together the people who are experiencing poverty with the people who are creating the systems that they use, so that they can work together and make programs that work. Imagine a diversity, equity, and inclusion panel that lacked diversity, equity, or inclusion. Any discussion that they had or policy they ended with would probably be short-sighted and miss the mark. That's what's happening in social services. And poverty is a diversity, equity, and inclusion issue. But that is a talk for another time. This model of inclusion really can work. And we know this because it's how some of our most successful social programming has been created. Frances Perkins is my favorite historical social worker. What? Doesn't everybody have a favorite social worker? She was a pro at bringing together those two groups of people, the people experiencing poverty and the policymakers. She was referred to as the woman behind the New Deal. And even though it was passed by FDR, it was Perkins who witnessed how employers were benefiting off of their employees' labor in a way that devalued and risked the workers' lives. And she cared enough about passing labor reform to make it a condition of her coming to work for FDR during his 13-year administration as president, and she was the first female cabinet member in history. Yep. The New Deal is so effective that everyone in this room is still benefiting from it. It brought us the 40-hour work week, child labor laws, workers' safety, and Social Security, among other things. And Perkins figured out how to do this by embedding herself in the lives of the people working in the factories and living in the ghettos of the early 1900s. She worked with labor unions, and she brought them to the table to discuss policy with FDR and the rest of the cabinet. So yes, this model works. And as I grow in my role, the way that I bring my lived experience to the table grows with me. Recently, the Housing Authority was awarded a $250,000 grant to encourage our members of workforce housing to return to school. Me, being a high school dropout who didn't return to school until adulthood, I had a lot to say about this topic. And my lived experience put me in a good position of being asked to run the program. It isn't just throwing money at a program that's going to make it successful. It's how you design it and its little details. Each member of our housing has different needs, different barriers they're facing. And our goal is to try to learn about all of them. By the end of our first meeting, a resident has had a chance to map out where they are, where they want to be, and what is in the way of them getting there. And then we can set to work, demystifying the process, setting up concrete supports, and offering open-ended support. Guidance. The results have been astounding. Just 4 months in, and we already have a quarter of our housing, our workforce housing, that is interacting with it. And not all of them are going to return to school, but each of them are benefiting from the conversations they're having, and they're gaining traction towards their goals. The program is working because the residents have been allowed to have a part in designing it. So I want to leave you with this. The stories that I've shared with you tonight are just a small window into the lives of people who are receiving assistance and using the social welfare system, which is why it is so important to continue creating seats at the table so that we can unroll a bigger picture and create understanding. If we want to end this war on poverty in America, we need to stop viewing impoverished people as the enemy and start viewing them as active participants in creating programs that work. And we're going to take that a step further to say we need to pay them for their expertise. Thank you.